Hello, let's take a short tour of business process management in action. Business processes consist of human-to-human and human-to-system interaction. In this visual, you can see that there are a number of people that are working in an ad hoc fashion, really have limited visibility over where they are in the process, might understand their particular piece of the process, but end up having to make phone calls, send emails, attachments, spreadsheets around across the team in order to participate in the process and attempt to collaborate as well as they can. And they have to access a variety of back-end systems while participating in the process. And this results in a lot of informal tasks, inefficient working styles, rekeying of data. It's hard to prioritize work and manage escalations. The decision making is really inconsistent and not repeatable in an optimal fashion. The data flow can be inaccurate and challenging between systems. There's an overall lack of control and poor visibility into where things are in the process. This can be very hard to manage, difficult to grow over time with the limited visibility into process performance and progress, and so therefore it can result in problems like poor customer satisfaction. When you look at the life cycle of business process management and take a look at what Gartner has to say about this, we can see that process improvement requirements are likely to be unique, which favors a build rather than buy. But when you look at these two options, there are really some pros and cons. In a build solution, it can be very customized and unique on the plus side. But typically, in order to build something from scratch, it requires a lot of IT bandwidth and a high overall total cost of ownership. From a buy standpoint, we might be able to roll that out more quickly with an initial reduction in cost, but it's hard to change over time, and you're more reliant upon that package solution or vendor. And so what we really need is a third way, as Gartner describes, business process management, which can be really a best of both worlds approach. The best of the build and the buy solutions, more customized and unique, but rolled out in a quicker fashion with cost containment. And so what does that look like when we apply that to this typical business process landscape? Business process management is a third layer that helps orchestrate the human-to-human and human-to-system interactions and helps us capture that tribal knowledge that people have, that we're dependent upon them to apply the business rules and business policies across the process. If we can capture that tribal knowledge and apply it to the process more consistently, then we have a more repeatable and manageable approach. So we can more easily prioritize and route work throughout the process, guide users through participating in the process more effectively. We can standardize and optimize resolution and escalations throughout the business process, leveraging existing systems and data, and we can monitor for business events and conditions. We can get better visibility in dashboards and business-friendly reports to help us manage where work is flowing through the process, where those work items are, and how we can identify hotspots and bottlenecks throughout the process to better optimize that process over time. And the process becomes easier to change with changing business conditions. So we end up with potentially a huge reduction in manual interactions, a more flexible, responsive process that is easier to manage and measure in business terms. So we get a more rapid, agile, and iterative approach. So how do we achieve this business process management layer? There's some essential BPM capabilities that we bring to the table. We have ways of modeling the business process visually at design time and when we're building that process into a runnable process application. We are able to identify the hot spots and bottlenecks in the process and flow that process through a workflow of decision points, applying business rules as we manage and run that process, defining and managing the business data that flows through the payload of the process, and building out and changing easily the user interfaces that we need to help guide and coach participants when they participate in the process. Documents and events flow through the process in a way that allows us to better manage that content and those events. And we integrate with existing systems so that we don't have to rip and replace, but rather integrate with existing systems in a straightforward fashion. And we can capture in business language the metrics and reports, the analytics, the key performance indicators, the thresholds, the business-friendly reports that the business needs to better manage the process. So if we look at how we take those BPM essential capabilities in a conventional application development approach and build out a business process application, what we see is that with a conventional application development approach, we have different developers using different tools, like a business analyst using something like Visio to model the process, yet a different developer role with different tools to implement the workflow and data and system integrations, different developer with a different tool implementing the business rules and event management, yet another developer and another different tool to build out the reports for the business, and yet another tool and development role to build out the user interfaces. And the challenge with this conventional application development approach is that, like a bucket brigade, where you have people sloshing water from bucket to bucket until you get down the line to the person that's closest to the fire, we, in this conventional application development approach, develop the application, creating artifacts and different tools and throwing those over the wall to different developers in a way that results in many different kinds of coding artifacts that are challenging to keep in sync, especially when you have multiple versions of an application. And the end result is that we end up managing the code and the tools instead of really focusing on the process. And so with business process management, we have a more roles-based approach that results in a more rapid, agile, and iterative way of doing things. We use a single shared process model, and all of the participants across design time, the analysts, the developers, the participants at runtime, and the analysts when we analyze and optimize the process in a continuous process improvement fashion are using a single version of the truth, a single shared process model. So in this roles-based approach, we can model out and implement the business process in an iterative fashion, playing back or running the process early and often, multiple times a day, to the business stakeholders so that we know that we've got it right before we roll out the production application. And when individuals and managers and executives use the business process, they're actually running that same business process model. So that when we get to the point of analyzing and identifying hotspots or bottlenecks in the process and subsequently making incremental changes to the business process, we're all along throughout the full life cycle making those changes against a single process model. So in business process management, we can bring order to the chaos with a business process management layer that introduces the ability to better orchestrate human-to-human and human-to-system interactions in a more measurable, visible way.